Kurt Meyer was one of the most controversial figures of World War II. Known for his bravery, toughness and undeniable charisma, Meyer was a field commander in the Waffen SS who led his men from the front, embodying the principle of leading by example. His battlefield exploits during 6 years of relentless conflict earned him a fearsome reputation and a place in military history. But Meyer's legacy is far from straightforward. While celebrated for his combat achievements, his story is also shadowed by a darker side. Like many of his peers in the Waffen SS, Meyer's actions during the war led to his conviction for war crimes, casting a long shadow over his military accomplishments. Meyer, born on December 23, 1910, to a modest family in Yerxheim, Germany, joined the SS in 1931 and by May 1934 had been assigned to Hitler's personal guard, the elite Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler. He was about 5 feet 10 inches tall with broad shoulders and a robust, athletic physique. Meyer initially served in the Leibstandarte's anti-tank unit, Panzer Company, as a platoon leader before advancing to company commander. Exhibiting the typical boldness of Waffen SS officers, Meyer saw his first combat during the Polish campaign in September 1939. For his prowess and valour, he earned the Iron Cross Second Class and sustained a shoulder wound from a Polish bullet. After recovering, he led the Leibstandarte's 15th Kradschützenkompanie motorcycle company, with notable success during the 1940 campaigns in France and the Low Countries, subsequently receiving the Iron Cross First Class. In the early stages of the war, Meyer distinguished himself as the quintessential Waffen SS officer and an exceptional leader of combat troops. His natural daring and composure in battle, combined with astute tactical acumen and military proficiency, did not go unnoticed by the higher echelons of the Waffen SS command. Recognised for his potential and earmarked for significant roles, Meyer was promoted to Sturmbannführer Major in September 1940 at the age of 30. In 1941, the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler was deployed in Operation Marita, Hitler's campaign to conquer Yugoslavia and Greece. It was during this operation in Greece, while leading his seasoned reconnaissance detachment, that Meyer cemented his legendary reputation as a formidable combat leader. The German invasion of the Balkans was remarkably successful, and to hinder the Greek Third Army Corps' retreat from Albania, Meyer's unit swiftly advanced to seize the Klissura Pass. Following this, they moved rapidly to Lake Kastoria to encircle and cut off Greek forces in the town of Kastoria. Meyer led the hazardous advance across the Klissura Peninsula, but his SS troops, having outpaced their artillery support, soon found themselves embroiled in a fierce confrontation with a determined enemy that refused to retreat. The situation devolved into a deadlock, with Meyer and his men pinned down by relentless machine gun fire. Despite orders to advance, the men hesitated. In a drastic move characteristic of his controversial command style, Meyer threw a grenade at the feet of the last man, forcing them into the open. This unorthodox tactic proved effective, the machine gun nest was captured, and the advance regained momentum, albeit briefly. The assault stalled again due to formidable Greek resistance near the town of Fiercest, strategically located on the Klissura Pass. The Greeks were firmly entrenched in the town, with additional forces positioned on the surrounding heights. To break through these defences, Meyer divided his troops into 3 assault groups, taking personal command of 1. The meticulously planned and executed attack commenced at dawn. By 11 AM, Meyer's forces had overrun the outer defences, and by late afternoon they had captured the town, securing 600 prisoners in the process. Meyer then advanced towards Lake Kastoria, launching an assault on the town of Kastoria from the south. By early evening, the defenders had surrendered, resulting in 1,100 prisoners being sent to German prison camps. By late April 1941, the lopsided campaign in Greece had concluded. In recognition of his audacious and inspirational leadership throughout the Balkan conflicts, particularly his triumph at the Klissura Pass, Meyer was awarded the Knight's Cross. His troops also bestowed upon him the enduring nickname Panzer Meyer, a moniker that stayed with him for the rest of his life. Later that same year, the Leibstandarte was at the vanguard of Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. Meyer and his reconnaissance battalion were once again plunged into intense combat, frequently penetrating deep behind Russian lines and then fighting their way back to their own. Despite the initial astounding successes in the east, the campaign in Russia soon devolved into a relentless and grueling war of attrition. Over time, the men of the Leibstandarte were driven to the brink of exhaustion, regardless of the number of villages and towns captured, prisoners taken, or miles traversed. Russia's vast expanse seemed unending. It was a nightmarish theatre of war, yet Meyers consistently led by example, earning the adoration of his troops. Often, his mere presence on the front line at critical moments revitalised an attack or bolstered sagging morale. His unwavering leadership and courage led to his being awarded the German Cross in Gold, a recognition that came as no surprise to those who served under him. Despite their defeat at the gates of Moscow, the Germans resumed offensive operations on the Eastern Front in the spring of 1942. The Leibstandarte soon found itself engaged in ferocious battles at Ulm, Cherson and Rostov. By February 1943, during the Battle of Kharkov, Meyer, now an Obersturmbannführer, lieutenant colonel, played a pivotal role in holding back Russian tanks, allowing his division to regroup and recapture the town. For his leadership and bravery, he was awarded the Oak Leaves to his Knight's Cross. Meyer had become one of the most renowned, admired and decorated officers in the German armed forces, a fact that caused some resentment among Wehrmacht commanders in Russia. As the tide of war turned against Germany, a delusional Hitler clung to the belief that men of superior will could reverse battlefield setbacks. Facing imminent catastrophe, he relied on officers like Meyer to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. The harsh reality was that, after over 4 years of war, Germany's reserve of military-aged men was nearly depleted. The Waffen SS, like the army, struggled to replace its heavy losses and, in desperation, began recruiting from the Hitler Youth to form the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend. By midsummer 1943, this new division, primarily composed of 17 and 18-year-olds, gathered at the Belgian SS military facility in Beverloo for rigorous training. Veteran officers and NCOs, predominantly from the Leibstandarte division, led the training, preparing the young recruits for the brutal combat ahead. There was no doubt about the recruits' dedication to the Nazi cause. With the Allied invasion of Europe looming, these young soldiers, many of whom were fervent in their ideological beliefs, needed to be rapidly equipped with the necessary combat and tactical skills to stand any chance of success. Time was of the essence, leaving little room for traditional barrack square drills or military formalities. Instead, the training was intensely focused on combat readiness, emphasizing live firearms exercises conducted under realistic battle conditions. Meyer, now promoted to Standartenführer, Colonel, was tasked with training the division's 25th Panzer Grenadier Regiment. Leveraging his extensive battle experience and natural leadership abilities, Meyer imposed strict discipline, prohibiting smoking and drinking among the young soldiers. He emphasized the critical importance of the upcoming battle for the war's outcome, instilling in each trooper the belief that they were invincible. Meyer demanded and received their unwavering loyalty. Through rigorous and relentless training, he transformed the 25th Panzer Grenadier Regiment into a formidable fighting force, ready to face combat with fervent dedication and a willingness to sacrifice their lives. Deemed ready for offensive operations, the 20,500 men and boys of the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend were positioned in a reserve area when the Normandy invasion commenced on June 6, 1944. Amidst initial confusion, Panzer Group West eventually deployed the 12th SS to operate on the left flank of the 21st Panzer and Panzer Lehr divisions near the Juno and Sword beaches where British and Canadian forces had landed, tasked with the mission to throw the enemy west of the Orne into the sea and destroy him. This untested unit became the first SS force to engage the advancing Allied troops as they pushed toward the critical communication hub of Caen. The soldiers of Meyer's reinforced 25th SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment led the division's deployment to Normandy, arriving on the outskirts of Caen shortly after midnight on June 7th. Meyer swiftly established his command post 3 miles from the city at the Abbey Ardennes, whose towering structure provided an excellent vantage point over the battlefield. He planned to launch a bold counterattack toward the coast at 4 p.m. However, in the early afternoon of June 7th, Meyer observed the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division preparing to advance towards the crucial airfield at Carpiquet. Meyer quickly adapted to the evolving situation, ditching his initial strategy for a grand ambush. As Canadian armour and infantry unknowingly advanced towards Carpiquet, Meyer waited until they were deep within his designated killing zone. At that precise moment, he launched his counterattack. The execution was flawless. The young SS Grenadiers attacked with intense ferocity, catching the Canadians off guard. They decimated a company of the North Nova Scotia Highlanders, inflicted severe damage on the rest of the battalion, and destroyed 28 tanks. Encouraged by the success of the ambush, Meyer leveraged the momentum to initiate a full-scale counterattack. However, the fierce naval gunfire forced him to call off the assault. He then ordered his regiment to fortify their positions and consolidate the gains they had made. The young grenadiers were disheartened that they hadn't driven the Allies into the sea as commanded, but they had effectively halted the Allied advance on Caen. For the next few days, Meyer tenaciously led his men in a brutal and bitter struggle against the determined 3rd Canadian Infantry Division. The battles raged through villages, hedgerows and fields around Caen. Meyer's inspirational leadership on June 7th was crucial in preventing the British Second Army from capturing the city on D-Day. The Allies soon realised that their overwhelming air and manpower superiority did not guarantee a swift victory. Meyer's troops fought with incredible tenacity, but many paid the ultimate price for their reckless bravery. Allied troops, upon initially encountering the SS teenagers, sarcastically suggested the division should use a baby's feeding bottle as its emblem. Yet, after days of relentless close-quarter combat with these highly motivated young soldiers, the jokes quickly faded. The young grenadiers, who had demonstrated their formidable prowess, earned the begrudging respect of the Allied troops. However, their ruthless fanaticism in battle also kindled a deep-seated hatred, particularly from the Canadians. After 5 years of bloody conflict, any remnants of chivalry on the battlefield seemed to vanish at Caen, where the relentless fighting often resembled the brutal intensity of the Eastern Front. In the fierce heat of battle, mercy was rarely given or expected, as both German and Canadian troops frequently executed prisoners on the spot. This grim chapter of the Normandy campaign cast a dark shadow, one that would have severe repercussions for Meyer after the war. The main body of the 12th SS Panzer Division had finally arrived to fortify the defensive line established during Meyer's counterattacks on June 7th and 8th. Despite relentless Allied assaults and the violent artillery barrages that constantly battered their positions, the Germans tenaciously held their grip on Caen. On June 14th, the unit's divisional commander, General Fritz Witt, was killed by naval gunfire at his headquarters in Venoix. As the senior ranking officer, Meyer stepped up to take his place. At just 33 years old, he became the youngest divisional commander in the German armed forces. Meyer's ability to seamlessly coordinate tanks and mechanized infantry under intense battle conditions not only enhanced his legendary reputation, but also achieved the seemingly impossible, as his troops continued to inflict severe defeats on the British and Canadian forces converging on Caen. For his extraordinary efforts in thwarting the Allied advance, Meyer was awarded swords to his Knight's Cross and promoted to Brigade Führer, Major General. For 4 relentless weeks, the 12th SS Panzer Division stood as the backbone of the German defences at Caen. Yet, with each passing day, the division's casualties increased and replacements were scarce. By early July, the substantial build-up of Allied forces and equipment posed a significant threat of encirclement. Despite Hitler's orders to hold at all costs, Meyer strategically withdrew his troops to positions south of Caen. After 33 days of fierce and often hand-to-hand combat, Caen finally fell to the Allies. The loss of Caen did nothing to weaken Meyer's determination to resist the enemy. By July 19th, his 12th SS was back in the heart of the fighting as the British and Canadians launched Operation Goodwood, aiming to break out of the French hedgerow country. In a remarkable display of skill and courage, the young SS troopers confronted the attack head-on, successfully blunting the Allied drive near Weimont. The SS men remained in the thick of the fighting, suffering heavy casualties for the next 2 weeks until they were finally pulled back to form the reserve for the 1st SS Panzer Corps. With little respite and few reinforcements, Meyer's exhausted division was repeatedly used as a fire brigade, rushing to fill breaches in the main battle line as one crisis followed another. Despite the overwhelming odds, and driven by Meyer's dynamic personality, the division continued to fight with suicidal fanaticism. Many of his grenadiers chose to fight to the death rather than surrender, while others carried explosives and climbed onto enemy tanks, destroying both the vehicles and themselves in the process. During the first weeks of August, the 12th SS played a crucial role in halting 2 separate Canadian offensives, Totalize and Tractable. However, even Meyer began to question how much more his troops could endure. In 2 months of intense fighting, his division had been severely depleted and was now a mere shadow of the unit that had arrived in Caen on June 7th. Nearly 30% of its troops had perished in the inferno of Normandy, while another 40% were casualties or missing in action. When the entire German army in the west became encircled in the Falaise pocket, nearly 400,000 troops faced annihilation. Meyer withdrew his battered formation to the west with orders to hold the northern side of the Falaise-Argentan gap open to allow as many German troops as possible to escape the trap. The battle was clearly lost, but once again Meyer and his men fought with incredible ferocity to keep the upper jaw of the narrow corridor open. Afterward, they helped cover the withdrawal of the German army from France, virtually destroying the 12th SS Panzer Division in the process. On August 20th, the survivors melted away in small groups across the Seine River, ending their remarkable campaign in Normandy. The remnants of the 12th SS joined the retreat into Belgium, leaving behind over 9,000 comrades and nearly all their tanks, artillery and heavy equipment. Meyer, now wounded, had survived years of heavy combat. His war came to an inglorious end on September 6, 1944, when he was captured by a Belgian farmer and his son and handed over to the British before local partisans could shoot him.
During the fighting back to the west, we got to know a new phase of this inhuman war. It was impossible to distinguish Soviet soldiers from harmless civilians. For the first time, soldiers were ambushed in towns and in the countryside without being able to identify enemy units. We became nervous. The locals did not dare to betray the concealed Red Army soldiers. The Soviets' enthusiasm and the attitude of the population demanded special watchfulness on our part. My old comrade, Fritz Montag, who has been given command of the acting headquarters company, drove into a minefield and lost both legs above the knee. He was brought to me fully conscious in a motorcycle sidecar. The fighting had taken on a treacherous character.
On February 12, 1943, German forces occupied a village called Yefremovka. Around this time, the Eastern Front was marked by intense fighting, rapid movements of troops, and massive partisan activity. The German strategy involved ruthless reprisals against local populations suspected of supporting Soviet partisans. An incident occurred on February 16, 1943, which escalated tensions significantly. Near Yefremovka, a high-ranking German officer was reportedly shot and wounded by Soviet partisans, and another officer had his legs blown off. In retaliation, orders were given to eliminate the village's inhabitants and destroy the village itself. This horrific action was carried out under the command of Kurt Meyer, whose forces occupied the village at that time. My extensive research has uncovered documents revealing the full story, marking it as one of the worst atrocities committed by the 1st SS.
When was it that you left Russia? About June or July 1942. Now at that time, what position did you hold, and in what unit did you belong? I was a major and in command of a Reich unit which I had formed in Metz, in the Leibstandarte. Yes, in the Leibstandarte. Was your unit at a place called Yefremovka? May I ask in what part of the front that is? I understand it is in the neighborhood of Kharkov. We were in Kharkov to the north of that place. I have never seen the name Yefremovka. Do you say in your own experience that German troops were shooting Russian prisoners? Not among my troops. Does this also apply to civilians? Yes, civilians have not been attacked. Do you say then that at no time within your knowledge or experience have any troops connected with your command executed civilians in Russia? Yes, I can say that with confidence. And again, did you at any time in your military history authorize or direct the punishment of a village by the shooting of the men and the burning of the buildings? No. And does that answer apply to the campaign in the East? And as to your experience in Russia and elsewhere? Yes, of course, I expect the blowing up of bridges, which has sometimes been necessary. Did you at any time tell anyone that you were responsible for the destruction of a village in that manner? No? Are you prepared to take an oath to that effect? Yes. In Jefremoka, I lived with Hauptsturmführer Nuske at the company command post, as there were not enough houses for that section of the platoon, 5 or 6 as far as I remember. At about 10:30 a.m., I heard a pistol shot immediately in front of the entrance. I ran to the door at once and saw a Hauptsturmführer, about 30 years old, with a scar on his cheek. He was wearing a white camouflage outfit and a fur cap. He shouted at me, wanting to know what I was doing there. I told him that this was the company command post. His next question was who was chief and that he should come to him. This was all he said as he shouted loudly. I expected an argument between Nuske and this Hauptsturmführer because of his tone. Nuske, however, restrained himself and came forward. By order of Meyer, this place has to be razed because this morning armed civilians tried to attack this place. Look at this one here so that you know how to do it. This was more or less how he gave the order. He then shot the woman who was busy cooking our lunch with his pistol. For emphasis, he added that the temporary company commanders were personally answerable to the commander, Meyer, for the execution of this order. And he added that the Obergruppenführer, this meant Sepp Dietrich, was there himself and was furious with the Russians because of this attack. As I heard later from the men of my platoon, in the house next door, this Hauptsturmführer shot 2 young girls, about 18, 19 years old, in the same way, and shouted at the men from the company, who were there with about the same words. Hereupon, Hauptsturmführer Nuske went away. I suppose that he went to the command post of the commander, came back after about 30 minutes, and confirmed that the order had been given by Meyer. Outraged at the behavior of the Hauptsturmführer, he said that he of all people had to behave like a madman. This referred to the Hauptsturmführer, as he had no official position or rank, and had no say within the recon detachment, Meyer's detachment. At the time, Nuske was Obersturmführer. The expression like mad correctly describes the way this officer behaved and shot the woman. On the basis of this order, all the inhabitants were shot, all the cattle killed and the houses set on fire. I do not know if Sepp Dietrich was actually there at the time, because I did not see him in person, but I was told so on various occasions. There was a rumor that Sepp Dietrich had prompted the order, which seems possible to me. It can also be assumed with certainty that when this order was given, Sturmbahnführer and commander of the Panzer detachment, Wünsche was present.
When Fritz Montag was fatally wounded by a partisan mine, he was not only a comrade in arms to Kurt Meyer, but also a pivotal figure in his life and career. Montag's influence and their close personal friendship extended beyond the battlefield. He was instrumental in Meyer's advancement within the army, providing mentorship and support that helped shape Meyer's military career. The sudden and violent death of Fritz Montag on February 17, 1943 deeply affected Kurt Meyer. Known for his emotional attachment to his comrades, Meyer's grief and anger over the loss of Montag were profound. This personal tragedy struck Meyer on a day already fraught with the chaos and brutality of war, likely exacerbating his emotional state. Having been engaged in continuous combat since the very beginning of the war in 1939, Meyer had experienced 4 relentless years of fighting on multiple fronts. The accumulated stress, fatigue and trauma likely culminated on this day, pushing Meyer to his limits. Many historians believe that this moment was a catalyst for Meyer's subsequent actions. In a fit of rage and grief over Montag's death, Meyer may have ordered the massacre as a form of immediate retribution. The brutality that followed saw German troops rounding up 240 men from Jefremovka and killing them. The soldiers then proceeded to kill the remaining villagers, including women, children and the elderly, and then set the houses ablaze. While the evidence predominantly points to Kurt Meyer as the instigator of the Yefremovka massacre, it is important to consider the role of higher-ranking officers such as Sepp Dietrich. Sepp Dietrich, the commander of the 1st SS Panzer Division, and had significant influence over the actions of his subordinates. There is no solid evidence explicitly confirming Dietrich's or Meyer's direct involvement in ordering the Yefremovka massacre. However, the possibility remains that such evidence could exist in Soviet records or other undiscovered documents. Dietrich's presence in the village and reputation and the known ruthlessness of the SS under his command add weight to the theory that he could have influenced the actions at Yefremovka. The Ardennes Abbey massacre occurred during the Battle of Normandy, specifically around Caen, France in June 1944. Following the D-Day landings, fierce battles ensued between the Allied forces and the German 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend, commanded by Kurt Meyer. The Ardennes Abbey massacre occurred during the Battle of Normandy, specifically around Caen, France in June 1944. Following the D-Day landings, fierce battles ensued between the Allied forces and the German 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend, commanded by Kurt Meyer. On June 7th and 8th, 1944, 20 Canadian prisoners of war were executed at the Ardennes Abbey, a medieval monastery that had been repurposed as the headquarters for Meyer's 25th Panzer Grenadier Regiment. The Canadians, mostly young and inexperienced soldiers from the North Nova Scotia Highlanders and the 27th Canadian Armoured Regiment, were captured during intense combat around the villages of Orthy and Buren. Witness testimonies and subsequent investigations revealed that these prisoners were methodically killed. On June 7th, 10 Canadian soldiers were randomly selected and executed in the Abbey's garden. The following day, another group of 7 POWs was killed in a similar manner. The bodies were discovered later with clear signs of execution-style killings, either shot or bludgeoned in the head. Kurt Meyer, as the commanding officer of the 12th SS Panzer Division, was held responsible for these war crimes. Eyewitness accounts and evidence presented during his war crimes trial pointed to his direct involvement. Meyer was charged with inciting his troops to refuse quarter to Allied soldiers and with directly ordering the execution of the Canadian POWs. Although he denied giving direct orders for the killings and claimed ignorance of the executions until after they occurred, the weight of the evidence led to his conviction. Meyer wasn't the only German officer who had a post-war sentence reduced due to the complexities surrounding orders and the conduct of soldiers during wartime. The Canadian general overseeing Meyer's court-martial had second thoughts, acknowledging that Meyer hadn't explicitly ordered his men to shoot the POWs. No solid evidence ever actually came forward. This reconsideration was partly influenced by the fact that the Canadian general himself had, under certain wartime circumstances, discouraged his men from taking prisoners. Many Allied commanders, upon reflecting honestly, recognized that their own troops had occasionally committed similar acts, driven by the brutal realities of war. The difference, as some noted, was that the Allies had won the war, allowing them to impose justice on the defeated. The Ardennes Abbey massacre is a stark reminder of the atrocities committed during World War II. 12th SS involvement in these events highlights the culpability of military leaders in war crimes and the long-lasting impact on their victims. Understanding these historical events is crucial for remembering the sacrifices made and ensuring that such crimes are not forgotten. The news of Meyer's reprieve sparked a wave of indignation across Canada. To many, Meyer was a war criminal of the highest order, notorious for his actions during World War II. The 3rd Canadian Infantry Division had suffered greatly at the hands of Meyer's troops, with reports indicating that at least 156 captured soldiers were brutally murdered. This stark reality underscored the Canadian perception of Meyer, fueling widespread outrage and a sense of injustice at the decision to grant him reprieve. Meyer's case was complicated by the absence of concrete evidence linking him directly to the crime. Consequently, no formal charges were ever filed against him. In Germany, many perceived Meyer's conviction as an instance of victor's justice, arguing that both sides had committed similar atrocities. They pointed out that Allied soldiers who had also executed prisoners during the early days of the invasion were never prosecuted, highlighting a perceived double standard in post-war justice. Throughout Meyer's imprisonment, accusations and counter-accusations persisted. He spent the initial 5 years of his sentence in Dorchester Prison, New Brunswick, Canada. Subsequently, Meyer was transferred to the British military prison in Royal West Germany. By the time of his release in 1954, his health had significantly deteriorated. Kurt Meyer, seated right, laughs with his beloved wife Käthe and his colleagues shortly after his release from a British prison in Vale, Germany on September 16, 1954. He then got a job as a distributor for the Andreas Brewery. Ironically, one of his most loyal customers was in the Canadian Army. Leading Waffen SS figures at a 1959 reunion from left to right. Kurt Meyer, the youngest division commander in the entire Wehrmacht, Jochen Peiper, who led his men on the furthest German penetration of the Battle of the Ardennes, Otto Günsche, Adolf Hitler's last SS aide, and Sepp Dietrich, one of only 4 SS generals with the rank of Oberstgruppenführer. Meyer remained an influential figure within the Waffen SS Old Comrades Association, vigorously campaigning for the rights of former Waffen SS members. He sought to secure the same benefits and recognition afforded to veterans of the Wehrmacht, Luftwaffe and Kriegsmarine from the West German government. Despite overwhelming evidence against the Nazi regime and the documented atrocities committed by the Waffen SS, Meyer remained unrepentant and steadfast in his advocacy. Meyer never renounced his National Socialist beliefs, holding steadfast to his pride in the Waffen SS and its achievements in battle. In 1957, he published his memoirs, Grenadier, which saw several reprints. However, his health declined significantly in the late 1950s, primarily due to the over 30 wounds he had sustained during the war. On his 51st birthday, December 23, 1961, Kurt Meyer succumbed to a heart attack, leaving behind a wife and 5 children. 15,000 people on a grey and cold December day attended Kurt Meyer's funeral on the Hagen am Berghang, Germany. Ex-servicemen from all over Europe came in droves to pay respect. And that brings our video to a close. This has been a truly fascinating and brutal part of World War II, sadly full of suffering. It is essential that we dive deep into these matters. Do let me know below what you think about this and if there is anything you think I missed. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe, as both help me and the channel a lot. A big thanks to my Patreon supporters. My Patreon will also be linked below. As always, I hope to see you on our next adventure. Goodbye for now.